So Preston, last time I asked you if you were cool with doing a Q&A. It's kind of a break from Fire and Blood. Some people were chill with that, some people were not. But I think it's for the best because I always check out your comment section to make sure, if anybody, because we always say like, leave a comment down below, but we do read them every now and then. And lately, people have been having some of the kind of a problem with some of the things you've been saying. And I know for a fact that some of the people I know personally, who listen to the podcast, they've also been meaning to have me ask you a couple of questions as well. And luckily for us, the audience also has the same question. So I combed through your comment section and I picked up a couple.
All right.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay,
We'll see how it's going to begin with, Preston, you fucking, pretentious know-it-all piece of crap. You just conspiracy theorist. My question is,
close. So,
when is Allar Deem the prince that was promised?
By the way,
Okay.
someone actually made an Allar Deem profile. He's lurking. He's lurking.
No, I mean, it's just going to grow bigger and bigger. I mean, eventually, I'm going to write a spin-off novel about the adventures of Allar Deem and Cleo Frey,
Oh, Jesus.
somehow back from the dead.
Not
Got the
Cleo
kiss of life. He got the kiss of life, and he's, there'll be a buddy story. Okay, continue.
So Nikita says, Preston tends to exaggerate. I mean, come on, broken collarbone and elbow. It won't take weeks to recover enough to have sex. Also, I may be misremembering, but didn't Strong get beaten so viciously because Cole was jealous? So they were banging prior to the tournament probably too.
They were. I mean, or at least according to the accusations that Rhaenyra was apparently banging everybody, or both Cole and Harwin Strong. But I think that's the whole point. Look, I mean, the passage so obviously points to Harwin Strong, and that it almost seems like if it were that obvious,
Wait, Harwin Strong or Cole?
well, that's what I'm saying is that I think it's probably Cole because the passage is so obvious to Strong. And because if it were really that obvious, then there'd be some serious problems. There'd be serious rifts with Rhaenyra and House Velaryon. You'd be dealing with, inheritance issues and things like that. Like it's very like even when you have a situation with take Joffrey as an example. Here's a situation where the secret's out. Stannis tells the world that Joffrey's a bastard and incest and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And even after all of that, when it's so obvious, people just pretend it didn't happen. Tywin just pretends that there's no incest and Joffrey's king and everything because they have to, and that's the way things go. And so people believe and buy into these lies, and this of course written down by maesters and copied over by another maester. But I just think that in George R. R. Martin's writing style, he made it a little too obvious that it's Harwin Strong. And he's throwing in these other things. Like, why even have in there that Harwin Strong broke his collarbone and elbow in one line and then never bring it up again? Like, why even put that in? Unless you're trying to question whether or not he's the father or not, And that's the thing is we're never going to know, but clearly he's making it ambiguous. This is the other thing is like a lot of people have a tough time when George R. R. Martin leaves things ambiguous because sometimes he doesn't want to paint himself into a corner. So like dealing with like Quentin is alive as that issue. Is Quentin Martell dead? Well, we didn't see him die. They cut away from the action, and then they cut away from the action when they're retelling the story. And maybe Quentin's alive and maybe he's dead, but it's ambiguous. And George R. R. Martin purposely wrote it ambiguous. He didn't want to paint himself into a corner. He wanted it to be a mystery. It's the same sort of thing here. Like he wants the mystery. He wants it to be ambiguous.
It's how you keep coming back.
Yeah. And it's why you keep debating and things like that. That's the whole point. Like the whole structure of his writing is to create ambiguity. This is why he has several perspectives telling these stories and lying about it. We're supposed to have doubt.
But what you're saying is you don't believe that because that's just a little too obvious. It's most
Yeah.
likely Cole because it's not what the audience would expect.
Right, or someone else. But also, he clearly put in these things to make us doubt it, right?
Hmm.
Like he clearly had Harwin Strong's collarbone and elbow broken. The question of how long it'll take to recover. So today, if you WebMD this, today, under modern medicine, it takes like 6 to 8 weeks to recover from a broken collarbone. This isn't today. This is the Middle Ages. Well, I'll amend that and say that Ice and Fire medical is a little better than the Middle Ages. Like they know about sterilization while the Middle Ages did not. But it mainly has to do with like their knowledge of like bacteria and things like that. But like why would in the with Middle Age or perhaps Renaissance technology someone really be able to recover quickly from a broken collarbone? I'm surprised he can recover at all. A broken elbow and a broken collarbone, and he's able to be essentially a Kingsguard after this. Like or the protector of Rhaenyra. I'm surprised. I mean, geez, really?
Well, what about Occam's razor? Sometimes the most simple explanation is usually the true one.
But that's real life, not a writer who like purposely tries to make things complicated.
Okay, you get a point. Help Conflict wants to throw a monkey wrench into this by saying, couldn't she have just slept with Harwin Strong just before the tourney, and her ex-lover is just injuring Strong in vengeance? I don't remember the timeline, but might that not work?
No, I mean, look, the timeline works fine for Harwin Strong too. I mean, Harwin Strong is around Rhaenyra, the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
But the question is, we don't actually know exactly when the birth was and exactly when the wedding was. What we know is that the birth is in the waning days of the year, and the wedding is sometime in the early part of the year. Could they have banged the day before the wedding, a week before the wedding? Who knows? Probably whatevs. But not after, certainly. But he's our author's putting this in so we can question it. Like, oh wait, is he even in the condition to do that? Some people would argue that it has to be around a time in which she's supposed to be having sex with Laenor, and so like Laenor, it has to be believable that it's Laenor's to some degree. And Laenor was in mourning after the death of Joffrey, after the wedding. I doubt he was, up for banging his wife then. But then again, they had to have some sort of, there needed to be some sort of sex eventually, just on the obligation of the wedding, consummation. So, maybe he has to do it to her like a week later, or pretend to do it with her a week later. And I don't know, but then a week, that's not enough to really like know about pregnancy. I mean, there's so much error in these things. And the source, there's very little written, and the sources are all questionable. So what are we supposed to do? I'm just getting in the author's head and saying, he made it a little too obvious that it was Harwin Strong. It seems like it could be somebody else. Kristen Cole, somebody else, whatever.
You got a lot of flack for saying like it's hard to fuck when your bones are somewhat broken. So a lot of people in the comment section were saying, well, can't you just get on she just get on top of him and ride him while he just lays there, half agony, half pleasure?
I mean, it depends, right? We have to wonder whether or not Rhaenyra was actually taught sex by Daemon Targaryen, the Rogue Prince, right? Because if she's not riding if she's not experienced with sex, right?
Hmm.
She needs
Okay.
she needs a little bit of experience before she's gonna get on top. Um, I don't know.
You need a lot of experience to get on top.
No, I'm not saying you need a lot, but you need a little bit. This is versus like this is the big question of whether or not the stories about Rhaenyra having sex a year before had any validity. Like, was she really fooling around with her uncle? Was she really fooling around with Kristen Cole? Was she really fooling around with Harwin Strong a year earlier? We don't know. But that's a big that's a big deal when it comes to whether or not she can get on top and start riding someone that has a broken collarbone and a broken just why would anyone do that? Come on. I don't know. It seems I've never broken my collarbone. Maybe someone in the comments can write about I had a broken collarbone once and it fucking hurt, and I don't know.
A lot of people did actually. That's what I'm saying. Like a lot of people did say I had a broken collarbone and I still fucked just fine. So
Did they? Wait, which comments talks about this fucking?
ever since we started talking about like the Christian Cole Howard Strong thing, everyone, even on
Everyone's
Patreon,
been obsessed with. I mean, this is a big thing. This has
It
come up.
is.
This is like the third time where it's coming back. It's like, first of all, I want to find this comment of somebody saying I was fucking with a broken collarbone, left and right, banging chicks. That was all I did. In
To the
fact,
dudes who fucking said that, please comment it again, please.
yeah, like, man, I love it. I love breaking collarbones and fucking bitches left and right. Yeah, like what? Who is this?
To move away from that conspiracy for a minute, Andrew Willow says, as far as the Winterfell dragon egg clutch goes, isn't Winterfell built around a hot spring? That implies volcanic activity. So perhaps not so unlikely that dragons would lay eggs in Winterfell as it is in the rest of the north.
Small correction. It implies geothermic activity, not volcanic activity. There's a difference. If you tried to get into any hot springs that were near a volcano, you would die.
Dante's Peak.
The water would be way too hot. Geothermal is when the plates are like rubbing against each other and create heat, while volcanic is when like lava comes up. So yes, any water near volcano is going to boil you alive. In fact, even a lot of stuff near geothermal stuff can boil you alive. But yeah, no, it's geothermal stuff near Winterfell. But the question is generally like about the warmth. Like, is the warmth like an important aspect to egg hatching? And the question is, the answer is we don't know. We don't know what elements really cause an egg to hatch. What we do know is we have Dany, and Dany at various points put her egg in a brazier, and that gets to a certain level of heat, way less than volcanoes, way less than geothermal activity. I mean, that brazier is going to be burning very cold compared to those. She put that. We're not sure if her putting the eggs in the brazier did jack. We know that Dany was, menstruating and having dreams about menstruation. I know this sounds weird, but this is a big part of a Game of Thrones. We're not sure if that menstruation had something to do with it. We're not sure if her pregnancy had something to do with it, and we're not sure if her miscarriage had something to do with it. All of these things could be aspects. Figuring out what are the elements to hatch dragon eggs is pretty tough. Like, for the most part, we kind of believe that you need to have the right genes. You need to be some sort of, not just a Targaryen, but a Targaryen with special genes, or a Valyrian with special genes. And then you need something else to happen. I would say that the one, but it's tough, is that when you isolate one person and you say, well, maybe this person had a special gene, or they did something strange. The problem is the Targaryens are all hanging out together. So a lot of times that people bring up, oh, but weren't these eggs put in the cradles with Targaryen babies? Isn't that what they need to do? Well, eggs were put in the cradle with Targaryen babies and didn't hatch as well. I mean, egg was given an egg and it didn't hatch. And when they were hatching, the other Targaryens are all hanging around doing regular stuff like menstruating, having miscarriages, having births. So we don't know if any of those elements are the things. The only one I would actually say the most educational dragon to look to is, besides Dany, is there was an egg hatched in the Vale called to a dragon called Morning, and so there's the question of what element brought Morning, because that at least is a little more isolated, and so it looked like, well, maybe it just needs a female Targaryen who's gone through puberty. I'm not sure, but I should probably do a video over on each dragon and what happened and how it hatched and what we know. But the thing is, going through these histories, it's really hard to even pinpoint the year that a lot of these dragons were born. Because they just don't mention them. All of a sudden, the dragon kind of appears, or they'll say something like, "Oh, an egg was given to Aenys, and it eventually hatched." And you're like, "Well, when did it hatch? Like that year? 5 years later? We don't know."
Your video about the genetics of dragons, did you make that before Fire and Blood came out?
I made that before Fire and Blood came out. I probably have to
Update it?
Update it. I still stand by a lot of it.
Well, now that we have Fire and Blood, I'm sure at some point you'll go back and rework your Genetics of Dragons videos based off the new information we got from this, the Fire and Blood, Volume 1. And I know you've also been waiting for the new book to come out before updating a lot of your older stuff, which I guess is inevitable considering the new stuff may conflict with older theories. It just kind of seems like a drag.
Yeah, I mean, at least when I did the Genetics of Dragons and War, the World of Ice and Fire was out, and that was based on a summary. So there's some of that in there. There's some information that contradicts, though. There's stuff in Fire and Blood that contradicts the World of Ice and Fire specifically on when various Targaryens are born and when certain dragons are hatched. And so now it's tough to like, well, which one do you go by? So
I would go by the one that George wrote himself, because The World of Ice and Fire was also co-written by Elio and Linda, and you made a good point several times about how, George didn't want to put certain things in World of Ice and Fire because he's not done with the books yet, and he wants to leave room for stuff that he might want to change later on. So
yeah, it's really tough because I think one of the big contradictions that frustrates me is, so when I think of like the one dragon that we can look to as to see if any elements like match up to Daenerys and her dragon hatching, it is Morning, the dragon that was hatched in the Vale. And the problem with that is, I think in the World of Ice and Fire, they say that egg was hatched during the Dance of the Dragons, but in Fire and Blood, they call it a hatchling a few years after the Dance of the Dragons. And so when you say hatchling, I mean, somebody calls it a hatchling. It's in quotes. So it's like, well, is that person wrong? Or was it actually hatched during the Dance of the Dragons and he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about? Or was the dragon actually hatched a few years after the dance? Because it makes a big difference, because it's about whether or not Rhaena Targaryen was after puberty or before, and so it's kind of important things, or whether she was actually sexually active, or could possibly have had a miscarriage or something like that, using moon tea or whatever, because I'm trying to match up all of the things that happened to Dany. Like, Dany is, post-pubescent, and that was a big deal, right? She had her blood. She was getting married to Khal Drogo. She got the eggs. So you think, okay, you've got to be post-pubescent, in order to maybe hatch dragon eggs? Or is it the pregnancy? Or is it the miscarriage even? Who knows? Who knows? It's tough when you have contradictory information. But I don't know. I'll have to redo it. I should do a video on the dragons one by one and how they hatched and what we know about them. But it's a toughie. It's a toughie.
Do an update of your genetics, because once again, like, there's new information out, so it might as well, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, this was one comment somebody put, like, oh, I think Targaryen miscarriages actually lead to dragon hatching, and I was like, oh, that's a really intriguing idea. I don't, something, some hormonal, activity could happen that's extreme that causes the eggs to hatch. Who knows? Or it might just be menstruation. But Dany was menstruating for like a good, I don't know, 6 to 9 months before, maybe even a year before her dragons are hatched. So, and she's pregnant a good 9 months before, her eggs hatch. And so maybe she, a Targaryen just has to give birth. Who knows? Or maybe they have to miscarry. It's really tough to say. Or maybe it's magic. Maybe it was all Mirri Maz Duur and the pyre. Who knows? But
isn't that what George said? That a good chunk of Dany's dragons being born had to do with magic?
Yeah, but George contradicts himself so much with the definition of magic that I'm not sure what he means. Is magic just unexplained science? Is magic? Like actual magical, like unexplainable stuff? Harry Potter? What does he mean by it? I don't know.
Yes.
In one conversation he'll say something, and then another conversation he'll say something else. So I don't know.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, it means all those things. So okay, that was question 2. By the way, just so you guys know, I picked 4. I was gonna have a 5th one come in, but as you can see, 4. Because Preston makes sure everybody gets their money's worth for these questions. So, which, by the way, never change. I love that you do that. Megan Lunger says, how would Larys Strong disguise the Clubfoot if he was masquerading as cheese? Disguising one's face and voice is one thing, but can you hide such an obvious disability? To which someone replied to her comment and said, maybe the Clubfoot was part of an elaborate disguise. To which Megan replies, a disguise he requested be cut off and buried separately from when he was executed? So for those of you who don't know, Larys Strong, somewhat of a spoiler, later on is executed towards the end of the Dance of the Dragons. And on his execution, he asks that after he's dead, that his clubfoot be removed from his body. That way he could be relieved of it even in death. So if the clubfoot was all part of elaborate ruse, then he committed till the very end.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is there's real life, and then there's like the commitment of Ice and Fire characters, so Ice and Fire characters, like in real life, I'd be like, no, there's no way that someone could fake the Clubfoot their entire goddamn lives, just as this like disguise. So there's the question of can, Varys himself, and Larys is obviously a parallel of Varys. So we look to Varys. Like, this is a guy who is going around pretending to be this perfumed, like, sensitive guy, when we know that, like, he has, like, a gruff voice and, like, can be all these other characters, right? Mm-hmm. So we know that he puts on a show constantly. And that's pretty impressive by itself. But then he's also moonlighting as Rugen the Jailer for how many years in this other role? Like going down and sleeping in this cell, in the black cells for years. Like it was a lot of commitment for the Rugen the Jailer thing. Impressive, very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
So did Larry Strong fake his foot his entire life just to have that as part of his character? Maybe. And then did he want the foot cut off and buried separately because that was evidence of the fact that he didn't actually have a club foot, and he wanted somebody to like dispose of his evidence? Like, who cut off his foot? Was that one of his people?
Wasn't it Cregan Stark who does it?
Oh, is it? I have to. You've aced me if you.
No, I'm asking you. Like, I'm pretty sure it was. Doesn't this all happen during the Hour of the Wolf, where Cregan comes in and like executes them all?
I mean, I don't. Well, I mean, he would cut the head off, but who knows who would take the body, right?
Mm.
Maybe. I mean, I'll have to research on like who did this to his foot, and what they did with it, and did they ever check it?
First, is there any possibility that Cheese could not be Larry Strong?
Sure, of course, but the fact that like he knows the ins and outs of the secret passages of Maegor's whole, Maegor's keep, and so does Varys, and their names rhyme, and they're both Master of Whispers. It's just that, like, that's what it is. And it just seemed, so it's the kind of like extreme brutality as well that you'd expect of a character like this.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like, maybe she didn't notice his club foot as well. I don't know. Maybe
It's
she
also
didn't
possible.
notice Cheese's club foot as well. But it's a great question, because it really, I mean, isn't this fun? Like, trying to go through it. Like, could he have actually pretended to not have a club foot his entire life, and then to go by the nickname Clubfoot? Like, that's pretty fucking ingenious. I mean, you can go anywhere. Like, that's the thing, is when you have such an obvious deformity, and then you go around and do something else. Like, when you have the secret identity that's so convincing, you can go. You're kind of liberated. Like, oh, that murder happened. Well, it clearly wasn't Larry's Clubfoot. Ha! Like, because the murderer didn't have a clubfoot. Ha ha
I
ha.
love it. I love that explanation. Well, you underestimate the level of commitment from Ice and Fire characters. That
I
is
mean,
true.
that's the thing, is like, obviously in real life, no fucking way could it be. But Ice and Fire characters, they have some fucking commitment, man.
And lastly, I'm probably gonna butcher this guy's name. Zvezdom, something like that. He wants to come back to the Christian Cole Harris Strong thing. And he says, I do not think that the hair thing in genetics proves all that much. Mendelian genetics applies to a lot of things, but not hair color. Certain combinations are unlikely, but not impossible. I mean, sure, Rhaenyra probably did have an affair, and maybe her kids, all or some, are not Laenor's, but the hair color does not determine that. And I think this whole incident is just anti-Rhaenyra bias. Nobody balks at the fact that Aegon was at his wife's or at his lover's bed more than his wife's. He gets a pass on his evil behavior, but Rhaenyra's infidelity is called treason. She's not married to royalty, she is it. This may be just a George mistake, but still, it's stupid. I have two brothers. My hair is brown, my one brother has red hair, and my other brother is silver gray hair. Not from old age, it's just naturally so blonde. My mother had dark brown hair, my father had blonde hair. The combination of those three colors is massively unlikely, yet it happened.
Great comment. It's certainly true. Of course, in real life, genetics is complicated, and you can't like, Mendelian genetics is so ridiculously simple that it's almost laughable. Like, in the real world, hardly anything happens with, according to the simplicity of Mendelian genetics. But the question is to all of this is how basic is George on this? And certainly fans think that he's basic based on like Ned Stark's super sleuthing in Game of Thrones. Which, like I say, Ned Stark's super sleuthing doesn't even fucking make sense. Like, I've railed about this before. Like, you go back and you find that like, oh, every time a Baratheon and a Lannister like had a child, like the Lannister's black, the Baratheon black hair like won out. Like, it's 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 such a stupid thing. Like when you actually think of it, like first of all, like why would the hair color stay with the family name that long? Like there wasn't that much incest. Like you would like eventually the family's hair color would shift from intermarriage. So like unless there was just massive incest, like you would not have hundreds or thousands of years of your family having the same hair color. Like ridiculous. Unless you were an entire pool of people that had like that hair color. So yeah, it's really stupid. Plus Ned's super sleuthing, even if you're going to accept that his technique was just fantastic, okay? Black hair always wins out over golden hair. Great. That only proves that Robert wasn't the father. It does not prove that Jaime is the father. So there's this leap to incest out of fucking nowhere. So like that a normal person wouldn't do. Like I think in real life, I would not immediately jump to thinking that someone was fucking their brother when thinking about infidelity. It would be like down the list of things that would come to mind. So it's really dumb, the hair color thing. But a lot of people think that like, okay, when there's a child in Ice and Fire, they either take after the mother or they take after the father. That's just how George R.R. Martin writes genetics in these stories. And that's certainly how the characters talk about it. So for instance, the Stark children either take after Catelyn and look like Catelyn, or they take after Ned and they look like Ned. So like Arya and Jon, whatever, take after Ned, but Rickon, Bran, Sansa, and Robb all look like Catelyn, right? This is the whole thing. But actually, if you read closely, it doesn't work like that. Sansa has light red hair, while Catelyn has dark red hair. So how does the child of someone with dark red hair and Stark brown hair get light red hair? Doesn't make sense according to George R.R. Martin genetics that the fans like think and all of this. But it's something that would probably happen in the real world, like because genetics isn't simple in the real world.
Holy shit, you're actually fucking with me here because I love the first book. I never noticed that. How did he come to that fucking conclusion that Cersei and Jaime were fucking? Wait a minute, is that a plot hole? Is that a goddamn plot hole?
It's a plot hole, but it also there's a theory called Starkcest, which is that the reason Benjen went to the wall is that he and Lyanna were fucking.
Oh, what the fuck?
and that Jon is actually a Stark incest baby.
What the fuck?
Or that Lyanna and Brandon were fucking or something, and that Jon is actually an incest baby. And that incest was on Ned's mind. And that's why he jumped to assuming that Cersei and
I'll take the plot hole over that bullshit. Get out of here.
No, it's plot. I think it's plot hole. It's really stupid. Ned should not have come to that conclusion. He should have come to the conclusion maybe that Robert was not the father, but there's no reason to assume that Jaime was.
You could argue that there are no like prominent men at court that Cersei could cheat with that have blonde hair.
I mean, Lancel.
So you won't come to the conclusion that she's fucking her brother, but her cousin, sure.
I mean, I would sooner think a cousin than a brother.
Mm.
Okay,
I'll give you that.
But there's a million unnamed people at court. Guards. I don't know, Preston Greenfield. It could be anything.
Mm-hmm.
What does Preston Greenfield look like?
Are you gonna look up what he looks like?
Yeah, that's right. I can't remember if they ever gave his. We know nothing about Preston Greenfield. He's just short. Yeah, Preston Greenfield. Like, why wasn't he assuming it was Preston Greenfield?
I don't know. Maybe she doesn't like short guys. I
I don't know. Who knows?
Fuck, that's
Who
horrible. God
knows?
damn, I didn't notice that. Okay.
Yeah. Ned Stark super sleuth. No, it's stupid. It's like, but there's a lot of things where go over the story and you go over it enough this many times over this many years, you start noticing the stuff that's really stupid.
There it is. There it is. And you're right. No one really like. You're right. Because Catelyn and Rob and their hair colors and Ned's. Yeah, you're making a good point here. Wow, I didn't notice that. Okay, son of a bitch.
Yeah. Yeah, so a lot of fans like because the characters in the story believe that like, oh, people either take after their mother or they take after their father, which is a ridiculous notion. Like kids take after both their parents. That's how it works. Shireen, for instance, looks like both of her parents. But
A poor girl.
yeah, I mean, but she's got like, some of Stannis's features and some of Selyse's features and things like that. So, so I don't know, or genetics is complicated, and you have a little bit of something else. So Sansa has lighter hair than her mother. So how did she get lighter hair than her mother? Well, because genetics is complicated. So bringing this back, we know that Kristen Cole had black hair, colored hair, and Rhaenyra had silver, gold, Targaryen hair, and Jace had brown hair. Okay. Like, had that happened in the real world, no one would think anything of it. Like that, but all of a sudden, like, because this is Ice and Fire, everyone's like, no, he either has to have coal-colored hair or he has to have, like, silver gold Targaryen hair. Oh, come on. Fucking come on. Like I say, Sansa has unique hair. Like, it doesn't have to be like that. Yes, the characters are that dumb. We don't have to be that dumb.
Okay, do you have like any you want to put in here before we wrap it up?
No, I guess we've been talking for a while. We can do, I mean, unless you have another, you say you have a fifth question.
I had a fifth one that it's me showing my bias here. Someone put in the same comment section. Uh, any thoughts on the theory behind the fact that Littlefinger might be Sweet Robin's father? I haven't heard this one.
Yeah, no, this again is based on hair color and so John Aaron probably had blonde hair, and Lysa obviously has the Tully auburn hair, and so Sweet Robin, has whatever dark brown hair, and so the idea is that sounds like Littlefinger. And maybe possibility. there's a few various lines that Lysa have said that makes it seem like that he wouldn't be, like when she finally has sex with Littlefinger after in a Storm of Swords, she screams out something like, "Make me another baby," and this is clearly in reference to the fact that she had her forced abortion, and she was very sad that she lost that child, and so there's some mourning from that she doesn't have a child with Littlefinger, and so kind of if Sweet Robin were Littlefinger's child, and Lysa was aware of it, it would kind of take away from that. Like she's very sad because she doesn't have that connection with Littlefinger. I think thematically, Sweet Robin being Littlefinger's child takes away from that. But obviously, like timeline wise, like sure, it's completely possible. And she did say another child, so I mean, another could still be in addition to Sweet Robin. So nothing's really definitive. But certainly I've heard this theory before. But certainly Littlefinger doesn't give a shit about Sweet Robin and is putting his life in danger. So maybe Littlefinger doesn't. If uh, Littlefinger doesn't seem to be aware that if Sweetrobin is his. So we're not sure. We're not sure. But
That's all I had. Did you have any
yeah.
that caught your eye that you would want to discuss real quick?
No, I mean actually the ones that caught my eye were the same ones. I mean they were on the same subject of what we discussed. And we got into a bit. So
Okay. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Oh, by the way, I know you guys always complain that these are very short. They're almost not even podcast like because a lot of podcasts. I don't know if you listen to any podcasts. A lot of the ones I listen to usually go on for over an hour, and
oh really?
ours you don't know that?
Uh I the only podcasts I listen to are like really well produced besides our own because I do listen to our podcast. But the podcasts I tend to listen to are like Planet Money and 99% Invisible and like the professionally produced like NPR ones that where they do a lot of editing and research and stuff like that. Not like two bros chatting kind of stuff.
Because no, someone on Patreon said, "Why do you guys all apologize?" Well, it's mostly me for episodes going a bit long. We wish these podcasts were 3+ hours. To which I replied, "YouTube analytics does tell us that people don't really like long videos. Like you guys may, and a couple thousand people may, but majority don't. And I love you, man, but this is true. Preston runs out of steam. If you, I
Well, you
won't."
can kind of listen to my voice near the beginning and near the end. Like I do get a little hoarse near the end of our
You
hour.
could just drink water. Like you never get like a water bottle or nothing.
That's sometimes, okay, yeah, I should.
Not to mention, towards the end, I hate to say this, but towards the end, like Preston will talk normally like this, and then towards the end, you can tell he's running out of steam because his sentences will be like this. So yeah, I think that Littlefinger might be Sweet Robin's father.
Oh yeah, yeah,
You fade
okay,
out a
yeah.
little bit, which I always find hilarious. Plus, I know for a fact that you have a wife and child. I don't want to keep you for too long, so you know. But yeah, I know you guys want it to be longer, but you know, Preston has a life, and I don't want to keep him too long. Not to mention analytics.
Not to mention Carmine supposedly, from what I hear, has a life as well.
You've heard nothing. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. As always, we will see you all next time where we continue more Fire and Blood.
Do you want me to think of other major plot holes that will ruin Ice and Fire for you next time we come on?
I
Besides,
so don't
besides
want you to.
Ned super sleuthing being idiotic.
See, I want to say yes, but at the same time, because it's funny, like you don't really like it doesn't really click in your head until someone like you points it out, and you're like, yeah, how did he come to that conclusion, huh? I'll think about it. I'll think about it. But guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Have a good one.